You can get the brooms out, people, because this weekend was a sweep in Cincinnati. I'll recap it all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Orioles fans, today is Monday, May 6th, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles' three-game sweep over the Cincinnati Reds this weekend in Ohio. I'll get you the 5 things you need to know from all 3 wins Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, highlighting some incredible starting pitching from Cole Irvin, Dean Kremer, and John Means in his return to the mound for the Orioles. We'll talk about the offense struggling a bit early, but really breaking out in the Sunday win. And we'll talk some bullpen things because some guys had a little bit of trouble like Craig Kimbrel, but others were dominant as the Orioles pitching as a whole really has led the way in this incredible 6-1 week. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Monopoly Go. And we got to talk more about Monopoly Go. This fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis. So download Monopoly Go now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Monopoly Go, game on. So let's start I usually go Sunday and work back to Friday, but it's a sweep. I usually will leave, if the O's win a series, I'll leave maybe the loss to the end. We got 3 wins to talk about. So let's just start in order with the Friday night victory, beginning the series for the O's in Cincinnati. After a 2-hour and 40-minute rain delay, the Orioles finally got on the field and came out with a 3-0 win over the Cincinnati Reds to open this series on the road. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from that Friday night win. The first thing you need to know is Cole Irvin just continues to roll on for the Orioles. Continues his scoreless streak, going 6 1/3 scoreless innings on Friday, allowing just 2 hits with 4 strikeouts and no walks, lowering his ERA. And he's, remember, been a starter all season for the O's so far, to 2.86. We are in May, and Cole Irvin has a sub-3 ERA for the Orioles. Only 6 hard hit balls against him. That is now for Irvin 21 consecutive scoreless innings over his last 3 starts. He's been unbelievable. 6 2/3 in Kansas City, scoreless, 7 scoreless at home against his old team, the A's, and now 6 1/3 scoreless in Cincinnati. Just mowing guys down at this point. And it's not with the strikeouts. Again, just 4 Ks in this one, but he's not walking anyone. He continued to do that. And he's doing what he did when he was at his best in Oakland, especially in 2021 and 22. He attacked the strike zone. He was on the corners. He didn't really get barreled up. He gave up a few hits, and sometimes he'd give up some homers, but there was a lot of traffic on the base paths. And generally, it was a lot of soft grounders, a lot of pop-ups. The ground ball percentage continues to rise for Cole Irvin. And how he attacked hitters on Friday night in that Cincinnati lineup, I thought was interesting because his most used pitch on Friday was the curveball. And we've seen him go to the curveball a lot. It has been statistically his best pitch so far in 2024, but he really relied on that thing. 72 pitches, 37 of them were curveballs. His next most used pitch, 16 four-seam fastballs, then 11 changeups, 5 sinkers, and 3 cutters. That is how Irvin attacked the Reds. And it wasn't a lot of swing and miss. 6 whiffs on 34 swings. That's not what he's there to do. He dropped the curveball in for 10 called strikes, 6 foul balls, couple swings and misses, a lot of soft contact. He can throw that curveball right now wherever he wants it. It's not the most dominant curveball in baseball, but he can locate it extremely well. And that 51.4% curveballs, by far the highest percentage of curveballs he's ever thrown. 37 curveballs. Most Irvin in his career has ever thrown in one start. So yeah, he's been throwing more and more curves with the Orioles this year, but this was on another level. He identified he had perfect command of that pitch and that the Reds simply couldn't hit it. And he combined that to just keep saying curveball, 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 and the Reds couldn't do anything with it. It's pretty fun to watch again from Cole Irvin. Now, the second thing you need to know from that Friday win is that taking him out when the Orioles did, you heard me mention he only threw 72 pitches. You're like, 72 pitches? Most guys, it's time to come out around 100 pitches. He was through 6 1/3 scoreless. Why are you taking him out at 72 pitches? Well, the decision I felt could have gone either way for Brandon Hyde. On the side of leaving Cole Irvin in, he had been great. They only had 2 hits. Again, he was only at 72 pitches. You could argue he had 2 more innings in him. At the very least, you could argue he could have easily gotten through the 7th and the 8th and then turned it over to the bullpen. They were flummoxed. He was working fast. He was being efficient. And the O's, although their bullpen was fairly rested, it can get unrested fairly quickly, and you want to save those guys. On the flip side, the argument of taking him out of the game, where Brandon did, the 7th inning began with Elly De La Cruz double, just the second hit of the day from the Reds. The other came from De La Cruz in the first inning, where this is kind of a random stat for Cole Irvin. De La Cruz, after singling in the first, he stole second. That was the first stolen base Cole Irvin had allowed since 2021. That is ridiculous, especially with the new rules implemented last year. He hadn't allowed a stolen base. He holds runners so well. Elly De La Cruz is just a different person out there. He's fun to watch. But then he went 3-2 on Spencer Steer. It was like one of his only 3-2 counts, and he threw a fastball right down the middle. And for some reason, Steer did not swing. Struck out looking for the first out of the inning. And that you could argue, okay, a double and then a 3-ball count, which we haven't seen. Maybe he's starting to lose it a little bit, and it was the 3rd time through the order. Elly De La Cruz, number 2 hitter in the lineup. 3rd time through the order penalty is real. For every pitcher, including Cole Irvin, your stats for pitchers go way down when you start seeing hitters in the lineup for the 3rd time. So they take that all into account, plus the fact that the Orioles, who a week ago didn't have this at all, but the O's had an extremely rested bullpen. I mean, Craig Kimbrel hadn't pitched in 4 days. Yennier Cano had only pitched, I think, once in that Yankee series. Perez had only pitched once in that Yankee series. Danny Coulombe only twice. Like, they had their A bullpen rested, and Brandon Hyde went to it, and it worked out. Yennier Cano got the final 2 outs of the 7th. Danny Coulombe wasn't at his best, but he still put up a scoreless 8th as well, and they were able to turn it over to Craig Kimbrel in the 9th inning, and I would have been fine with either Hyde decision, whether he left him in or he pulls him out. But again, it was only a 3-0 lead, and the tying run was on deck. It's not like it was 7-0. If it was 7-0, Irvin just continues to roll. But at 3-0, you're 1 walker hit away from the tying run coming to the plate against a pitcher in Irvin who has been susceptible to the home run ball. And remember, in a ballpark that is essentially the number 1 ballpark for home runs in Major League Baseball. So you are playing with fire a little bit. The more you keep him in, I could have seen the decision either way. But the 3rd thing you need to know from that 3-0 win on Friday is that the last reliever the Orioles went to with the 3-0 lead in the 9th, they brought back Craig Kimbrel. Kimbrel, who had 4 days of rest, had not pitched since last Sunday when he blew his 2nd save in 3 days against the Oakland A's, went a walk and then a 2-run homer and left the game with upper back tightness. Orioles said they weren't going to place him on the injured list. He was unavailable Monday and Tuesday against the Yankees, but he was throwing a bit on Wednesday and Thursday, just never got into either of those games. And so you could tell he was available. And so the next save chance the Orioles got was kind of a perfect one to get Kimbrel back in there after the little back soreness and the ineffectiveness. Well, you can't ask for a better spot than a 3-0 lead with 4 days of rest. And they put him in there, and he looked awesome. He was fresh. The stuff was sizzling. 1, 2, 3. He strikes out the side in the bottom of the 9th to secure the save. And the best part was, his fastball looked really good, but he did not throw a curveball in that entire outing last Sunday against Oakland. He threw 5-6 curveballs on Friday night, and he was throwing them for strikes, which was really, really nice to see. That was obviously a great positive sign for the Orioles. 4th thing you need to know from the O's win over the Reds on Friday night in the opener of this series is that the Orioles had a lot of traffic on the bases, but they had a lot of trouble converting as well. Orioles, as I mentioned, scored only 3 runs on Friday night, despite the fact that they had a lot of base runners. They put together 9 hits in this game. They drew 5 walks in this game. Like, they got on base, but went 2 for 13 with runners in scoring position. They got 2 walks from Heston Kjerstad, who got another start with Colton Cowser getting the day off, who had been struggling a little bit recently. Like, guys were getting on base. They had chances in pretty much every single one of the first 6 innings. Hunter Green, the fireballing right-hander, was the starter for Cincinnati, and he ended up going 5 2/3 scoreless in this game, but the Orioles seemingly had traffic in every single inning he was out there. But they got him out of the game, and despite not converting while he was in there, The fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 3-0 win over the Reds on Friday is that they finally broke through against the Reds bullpen in the seventh. The right-hander Emilio Pagan came on. Side note, Fernando Cruz has been pretty good this year. His splitter might be one of the best pitches in baseball. He came on with 2 on and 2 out in the sixth and struck out Heston Kjerstad to keep the game scoreless. It took him like 6 pitches. That was it. I was very surprised the Reds did not leave Cruz in to pitch the seventh. Instead, they go to Emilio Pagan, who's been fine this year too, but it backfired. Pagan comes in. Jorge Mateo, shout out to him, singles off a righty to lead off the inning. Then he steals second, as he's known to do. Gunnar Henderson hits a hard fly ball to center. It allows Mateo to tag up from second and go to third. And then Adley Rutschman capitalizes with an RBI double. Orioles' first hit with a runner in scoring position on the night to make it 1-0. And then who else but Ryan O'Hearn to kind of put the nail in the coffin a little bit with a 2-run homer to right field, 104 off the bat, 395 feet to put the Orioles up 3-0, all off Pagan in that seventh inning. And then, of course, the bullpen of the O's held on in the offense, doing just enough to win that game on Friday. And it was kind of a similar story as the Orioles and Reds moved to Saturday. The Orioles pitching was great. The offense did just enough, but the bullpen did have a little bit of a hiccup at the end of the game. Luckily, they got the win, and even more luckily, John Means was back, and he looked awesome. We'll get to how awesome he was as we recap Saturday's win coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn. Are you struggling to close deals? Well, B2B selling is tougher than ever. And that's why I want to tell you about LinkedIn Sales Navigator. LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a sales intelligence platform that helps professionals effectively prospect and engage high-value customers, drive higher revenue, and increase sales performance. Sales Navigator, it helps you target the right buyers with key signals that you need. And fueled by LinkedIn's 1 billion member platform, Sales Navigator gives you the most up-to-date first-party data, enabling you to unlock conversations with the people that matter. And right now, you can try LinkedIn Sales Navigator and get a 60-day free trial at linkedin.com/lockedon. That is linkedin.com/lockedon for a 60-day free trial. Let LinkedIn Sales Navigator help you sell like a superstar today. Just go to linkedin.com/lockedon to get started. And today's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Monopoly Go, which I know we already talked about it once, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get, like unique stickers, cool playing pieces, and much, much more. And plus, Monopoly Go is great because it feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges, a ton that include their own mini games. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Monopoly Go. Game on. So after the Orioles took the opener 3-0 over the Reds on Friday night, after sitting through a rain delay that lasted over 2.5 hours, there was another short rain delay on Saturday. It was not great. Listen, it was not great weather in Baltimore over the weekend. It was not great weather in Cincinnati either. Now, luckily, the rain delay on Saturday was, I think, more like 30 minutes instead of 2 hours, 40 minutes. The game started a little later, but they still got a full baseball game in. And the Orioles won it 2-1 on Saturday to clinch the series. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from that Saturday win. And the first thing you need to know is John Means is back. And John Means is maybe back and better than ever. I mean, it was one thing just for John Means to be back on the field, right? We knew it wasn't a setback of the injury. He came back from the Tommy John surgery last September, made 4 pretty solid starts for the Orioles. I think many thought he would be the number 3 starter in the ALDS. He has some forearm and some elbow soreness. The Orioles shut him down for the postseason, and they even kind of shut him down for the offseason. They wanted to slow play his offseason to make sure he was okay, so he didn't pitch in spring training. His spring training was basically his 6 rehab starts in AAA Norfolk in the month of April, and then the last day they had to activate him was Wednesday, and they did it, and finally announced later in the week that he would start the Saturday game in Cincinnati. So it was good enough that he was just on the field pitching for the Orioles. The second thing that would have been good enough to be, hey, he was good enough to help the Orioles win. That would have been great. He went all the way to level 3, which was Saturday in his return, was one of the best starts of John Means' career. And that's saying something for a guy who in 2019 was an all-star and was third in AL Rookie of the Year voting. And in 2021, oh yeah, he threw a no-hitter and was, no doubt about it, the ace of the Orioles from 2019 through basically the start of the 2022 season until he went down with the elbow injury. And yet, this was better than a lot of those starts a few years back. Dominated 7 scoreless innings for John Means in this one. He allowed just 3 hits, 8 strikeouts, no walks on 85 pitches, just 6 hard hit balls from Reds hitters against him in 7 innings. It was the John Means patented changeup just to the max in this game. More changeups than anything else for Means. And it's not unprecedented for John Means to go changeup heavy. 31 of his 85 pitches were changeups. That was his most used pitch. 22 fastballs, 18 sliders, and 14 curveballs is how Means mixed in the rest of the stuff. But it was kind of harder than we usually see Means' changeup. We usually see it kind of 81, 82. He was 83 to 85 with the changeup, despite the fastball being its normal sitting 92 essentially on the day. So not as much difference, but there seemed to be a little more movement at times on that pitch, even though the velo was up. And he got 8 whiffs on 16 swings on that changeup. And overall for John Means, all 4 pitches were working. 19 swings and misses on 44 swings by Reds hitters. That is a 43.2% whiff rate for Means in that start. That is the 3rd highest whiff rate in any single start of John Means' career, even higher than the no-hitter he threw in Seattle back in May of 2021. The whiff rate in the no-hitter, 39%. The whiff rate Saturday in Cincinnati, 43%. Only 2 other starts, he gotten a better rate of swings and misses. The fastball velocity was 91.8 on average, right on line with what we've seen from John Means when he has been at his best. And also, we know how he attacks righties, right? He goes the fastball kind of up and in, change up, down and away. It was working all day against the Reds righties. But he has a very different plan of attack when he faces left-handed hitters. That's when he'll throw more fastballs, more sliders, and some more curveballs. And when he was facing lefties, the slider, and he used it against righties too, which was interesting, but the slider was maybe the best I've ever seen it from John Means. 6 whiffs on 12 swings against his slider. The last time he got more than 6 swings and misses on his slider in one game, you got to go all the way back to his rookie year in 2019. That's how long it's been since his slider was that good. And I understand the Reds offense came in already as the 25th ranked offense in baseball. They have not been good. But John Means a fly ball pitcher. That's a ballpark where a lot of fly balls turn into home runs. And the Reds are still a major league team that is at about 500 and is trying to make the playoffs this year. They've been struggling, but Means made them look silly on Saturday night. And I'll say it, I was worried about Means. He really struggled at times, not just with bad numbers, but with bad command, bad velocity throughout different parts of his rehab assignment in Norfolk. But he threw 7 scoreless in his final rehab start with 8 strikeouts. And then he just says, okay, I'll go up to major league hitters and I'll also throw 7 scoreless with 8 strikeouts in my first big league start. It's hard to say that John Means will look like this every time out. He just won't. It's hard to do this. Again, this is without argument a top 5 start in Means' career. He's not going to do that every time. But the fact that he looked this good is a huge, huge positive sign for him and, of course, for the Orioles rotation as well. Second thing you need to know from the Orioles win on Saturday is that Craig Kimbrel did not have as good of a time in this one. Now, Means left the game after 7 scoreless. I know there was some chatter about, Means had only thrown 85 pitches. Why didn't he go back out? The Means one was much more understandable than Cole Irvin. First of all, 85 pitches is different than 72 pitches. Also, the fact that I know Means threw 95 pitches in his last AAA rehab start, but it's his first start back, right, in a while. He hasn't started a lot of games in the last 2 years. I'm totally fine with taking him out after 7 scoreless and 85 pitches. I think many were as well. Cionel Perez came in, didn't look amazing, but did put up a scoreless 8th inning to keep the Orioles up 2-0. And then it was 2-0 going into the bottom of the 9th. And I was kind of thinking okay, Kimbrel was having the back issue, hadn't pitched in 4 days. Then he looked awesome Friday night. I just thought maybe they'll still slow play him. They won't want to pitch him on a back-to-back. And I figured because Yennier Cano didn't throw the 8th, I figured Cionel Perez got the 8th because the plan was for Cano to get the 9th and to give Kimbrel another night off. But that was not the case. And I was like, Kimbrel looked amazing Friday night. Maybe he can do it again. He came back out there in the ninth on Saturday and unfortunately did not look amazing. Gave up a leadoff single, then a walk. Now, Kimbrel still did get a gigantic out because it was first and second, no outs in a 2-0 game with Elly De La Cruz, you could argue maybe the only awesome hitter in the Reds lineup, coming to the plate. And Kimbrel struck him out looking on a curveball for the first out of the inning. That was huge. But then he couldn't get a fastball up. He allows an RBI single to Spencer Steer, makes it a 2-1 game with first and third and one out. And many were upset last weekend when Kimbrel blew both of those saves against Oakland that Brandon Hyde didn't take him out of the game earlier, whether it was just leaving him in for too many batters on Friday and not taking him out when they went to check on him injury-wise after the first batter on Sunday. Well, you got what you wanted for the people that were complaining about that, because it's hard to take out your Hall of Fame closer while the save is still intact, like while you're still leading in the ninth inning despite him struggling. But that is what Brandon Hyde did. He smartly had Yennier Cano warming, and with first and third one out in a 2-1 game, he took the ball away from Kimbrel after 4 batters. Now, in terms of the velocity and the stuff and the command, he still didn't look nearly as bad as he looked in those 2 outings against Oakland last weekend, but it wasn't good, and he pitched poorly enough to be taken out of the game. And I get the move. It had to be tough for Brandon Hyde. But I think right now, I mean, Kimbrel just clearly didn't have his best stuff. He wasn't anything close to how good he was Friday. And I think the Orioles are maybe still figuring out how exactly to use Craig Kimbrel, because yes, his stuff is still good. And yes, he's a Hall of Fame closer, but he's also 35. And they learned last week that, him pitching every other day is not sustainable. And I think what they maybe should do right now, and I could see them doing moving forward, is like, let's just not have Kimbrel throw any back-to-backs. Even if there is times where he throws 3 times in 5 days, as long as there's an off day in between, I think he'll be more effective. I think the back-to-backs, at least until we know, okay, his back is fully healed, he's fine, and even then I'd be cautious. If you're going to overwork him, you want it to be a little later in the season, not in April and May. So I do think moving forward, the back-to-backs are just not going to be for him. But the third thing you need to know from the Saturday win is that luckily, Yennier Cano was ready to come in and save the day. Now, I mentioned he got 2 outs in the 7th, relieving Cole Irvin on Friday. Luckily, it only took him 3 pitches to get those 2 outs on Friday night. So even though he was pitching on a back-to-back, much more rested when you only throw 3 pitches the night before. And Cano came in there and did his job. Now, first batter he faced was right-handed hitting Tyler Stevenson. Good hitter, but does not run well. You're bringing in Cano to get the ground ball double play, right? You're up by 1, runners on first and third, 1 out. You're looking for a ground ball double play that ends the inning and gets you out of it. Stevenson is a true double play candidate. On a 2-2 changeup, Cano dots one on the outside corner at the knees that should have been a called strike 3. Now, Spencer Steer did take off and steal second on the play, but absolutely should have been strike 3. For some reason, it wasn't called strike 3. Cano ends up walking Stevenson, and now the bases are loaded with 1 out. And now you really need the double play. And now a base hit, you lose the game. And Cano just bears down, throws a wicked sinker running in on the hands on Christian Encarnacion Strand to strike him out, then gets ahead of Jeimer Candelario 0-2, gets him to pop up a changeup to left field to end the game. Cano escaping the jam and getting the save and giving the O's the 2-1 win. He hasn't been as good as he was last year at times. I mean, how could you? He was unhittable. But he's just been so solid, so steady, so consistent, has stepped in and gotten so many big outs for the Orioles this year. What a pitcher he is, and what a save that was, literally, for the Orioles on Saturday night. Now, the fourth thing you need to know from that win, as we flip it back to the offensive side, Adley Rutschman did his absolute best to carry the Orioles offense. Rutschman with a 3-for-4 in the game on Saturday with a solo homer in the 5th inning, went 96 off the bat, 377 feet. That gave the Orioles a 2-0 lead. And Adley's had kind of a different profile at the plate. Now, he's still hitting second for the Orioles this year, but he's chasing out of the strike zone more. He's walking way less, but he is barely striking out and whiffing more. Like, even though his walk rate's way down, chase rate's way up, his strikeout rate is up like incrementally, and the whiff rate is up incrementally. They're both still good. And it's kind of what's been a team-wide and organization-wide approach from the Orioles here in 2024. They're being much more aggressive. They're walking less. The Orioles are like top 10 or top 5 in every offensive category, except for walk rate, where they've been in like the bottom 5 this year. But they're doing so much damage because they're being so aggressive early in counts, and they're leading the league in home runs as well, that the approach is working across the board. And for Adley Rutschman, he hasn't hit for as much power, but he's hitting for big time average this year. And Rutschman, who had the RBI double that I mentioned on Friday, he comes up with the 3 hits, including the homer on Saturday with that RBI. And then he had another big day on Sunday with a 2 for 5 and a double and a couple of RBIs. And all of a sudden, Adley Rutschman in top 5 in the American League at batting average, hitting 324 on the season. Like, the on-base percentage isn't as high up. He's not walking, but he's still being productive. And hey, if the change is going to work for him, I think the walks will still come. But it's kind of fun to watch this version of Adley Rutschman that's swinging a little more and getting some more hits as well. He is leading the American League in hits at the moment. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 2-1 win on Saturday over the Cincinnati Reds to clinch the series is, how about Jorge Mateo? I mentioned the big leadoff single he had to start the rally in the 7th on Friday night. On Saturday, he got the start again and hit another home run. Now, Thursday, hit a home run over the fence for the first time in over a year. Saturday, he homers again. His solo homer opened the scoring to put the Orioles up 1-0 in the 4th, 98 off the bat, 374 feet. And even including Sunday, when Mateo didn't have his greatest game, he went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. He's still hitting 245 with a 777 OPS. You'll take that from Jorge Mateo with the good defense. Made another great defensive play at second base on Saturday night. The amazing speed. He stole a base on Friday. Still, 6 out of his last 12 balls that he's put in play have been hard hit. If you're getting a 50% hard hit rate from Jorge Mateo, you're loving what you're getting from that guy. And I mean, I'll tell you this right now, it's not going to be every day, but if Jorge Mateo continues to hit a little bit, I mean, he started against a righty on Friday night for the first time. Ramon Arias might be in a tough spot. Jorge Mateo might be playing second base almost every day until Jackson Holliday rejoins this Orioles team. But shout out to him for getting the bat going early in the season for the second straight year. But that was the series win for the O's, taking the first 2 games. Now they were just looking for the icing on top of the cake and trying to get the sweep on Sunday. And I'll tell you, Sunday's game looked much different and honestly looked much better for the Orioles as they completed that sweep. I'll tell you how they did it to finish off the pod coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Yahoo Finance. Now, you might know Yahoo. I'm sure you do, but what about Yahoo Finance? Wouldn't it be great if you could see all of your investment and retirement accounts in one place? Well, with Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. You can really see it on Yahoo Finance. Everything you need is right in front of you. They make it super easy. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. So whether you're a seasoned investor or you're just looking for extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools you need in one place. They are the #1 finance destination, providing a holistic look at everything you need in the finance world. And with a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. So for comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com. One more time, that is yahoofinance.com. So the O's got the win Friday 3-0. They got the win Saturday 2-1, and then they finished off the sweep with a blowout, beating the Reds 11-1 on Sunday afternoon to finish off that 3-game sweep. 3rd sweep of the year for the Orioles. They swept the Red Sox on the road, the Twins at home, and now the Reds on the road as well, putting the Orioles to 23-11 on the season through 34 games. Unfortunately, the Yankees also swept the Tigers this weekend, so the Orioles' lead atop the AL East is still only 1 game, but you love controlling what you can control, and that was the Orioles winning all 3 games. And I'm going to finish this out with the 5 things you need to know from Sunday's 11-1 win for the O's. And the first thing you need to know is Dean Kremer just kept it going for the Orioles starting pitchers this weekend. I mean, it was John Means who picked up right where Irvin left off. It was Kremer who picked up right where Means left off. Dean Kremer, 6 scoreless innings of 1 hit ball in Cincinnati on Sunday with 6 strikeouts and only 1 walk. Took him 93 pitches. He allowed just 4 hard hit balls, and the ERA is now 3.57 on the season for Dean Kremer. And I got to tell you, like, his starts recently have all kind of looked like this, where he's just heavy on the cutter. His cutter is moving more than ever before. It's looking closer and closer to a hard slider. It's 85 to 88 at times for Kremer. And he didn't have as much swing and miss that he's had in the past on Sunday, but he made up for it with the four-seam fastball. It was 35 cutters and 30 four-seamers. That was by far what he used the most. That was maybe the best four-seamer I've ever seen from Dean Kremer. Now, it wasn't a big velo bump. He was, 93 to 95. That's what we usually see from Kremer. But 7 whiffs on 13 swings against the four-seamer. It was just high fastball. Hey, Reds hitters, try and hit it. And guess what? They could not for all of those 6 scoreless innings from Dean on Sunday. He actually had 4 1/3 perfect innings before Encarnacion Strand broke it up with a 1-out single in the 5th inning. That was the only hit against Dean Kremer. And that one walk he allowed was the only walk by Orioles starters this weekend. That's right. Between Irvin, Means, and Kremer in this series against Cincinnati, they combined for 19 1/3 scoreless innings. The Orioles starters didn't give up a run this weekend. As a matter of fact, the Orioles pitching staff as a whole gave up 2 runs in 27 innings, but the starters 19 1/3 scoreless, 6 hits, 18 strikeouts, 1 walk. I would call that complete dominance by the starting pitching. And it's not just this weekend. The Orioles pitching was tremendous in the Yankees series. They took 3 of 4 against New York this week. Remember, they only gave up 6 runs in those 4 games. So this week, 7 days from last Monday to Sunday, the Orioles went 6-1, 3 out of 4 against the Yankees, all 3 against the Reds. Their starters in those 7 games were dominant. It was Grayson Rodriguez, then Grayson Rodriguez, then Dean Kremer, then Corbin Burns. Then we saw Kyle Bradish come back. Then we got Cole Irvin, and then John Means and Dean Kremer again. It was kind of a mix and match with all the guys getting healthy. Those starters in 7 starts combined for 42 2/3 innings of work. First of all, that is an average of over 6 innings per start, which is awesome to see. Only 23 hits allowed, only 5 earned runs allowed. That is a 1.05 ERA with 36 strikeouts to only 11 walks this week. The Orioles starting rotation, even with pieces being mixed and matched, just absolutely dominant. Second thing you need to know from the Sunday win is that the one guy who lost his spot in the rotation when Means and Bradish came back, Albert Suarez, well, we got to see him pitch out of the bullpen for the first time for the Orioles. Came out of there in the 7th inning with the Orioles leading 6-0. It was kind of a perfect spot. The O's had tacked on some more runs to go up 6-0. And Suarez gave them pretty much exactly what they were looking for out of the Oriole bullpen. Albert Suarez, 2 1/3 perfect scoreless innings, 7 up, 7 down with just the 1 strikeout, but also just 1 hard hit ball. And it took him only 24 pitches to get 7 outs against the Reds. Now, what's interesting was usually with guys who throw hard like Suarez does, I mean, the fastball's been up to 97 and above this year. You think, oh, you put him out there in the bullpen for shorter stints, the velo will go up. Now, it actually went down. His fastball averaged 95.1 this year with the O's. Fastball was 94.4 on average. He topped out at 95.1 in the game on Sunday. But some of that could be, it wasn't, hey, Albert, go out there and throw 1 inning and let it ride. Albert Suarez's plan was potentially to finish that game on Sunday. Like they thought, hey, leave some in the tank. You might have to pitch 3 innings in relief. So that's probably why his average fastball was right around what it's been as a starter. Now, eventually, Suarez could be moved into a shorter relief role, and maybe then we see 97, 98 plus. And he didn't really get a lot of swing and miss, only 3 whiffs on 14 swings, but he's still getting quick outs, and he was getting outs in general. So if you can have a guy who can be a long reliever and come in and retire 7 straight batters, that is incredible for your bullpen to have. The Orioles haven't had a long man all year. So at the very least, Suarez could be a long man right now. And that is hugely popular for the Orioles. And it means that, with the offense and what Albert Suarez did, Mike Baumann couldn't hurt me on Sunday, even though he was horrible. Came in to pitch the 9th inning and gave up a run and loaded the bases and was just looking dreadful again. He can't hurt me. It doesn't matter. The O's won the series and swept the series and won 11-1. Now, I mentioned 11-1 because the third thing you need to know from the Sunday win is that the offense finally woke up. Now, they'd only scored 5 runs in the first 2 games, even in the Yankee series. I mean, they got 7 runs on Thursday, but those first 3 games in the Yankee series, I mean, you had like the 4-2 win, the close wins. They got shut out on Wednesday for the first time this season. Offense just kind of exploded. 11 runs on 11 hits, 5 walks, and a hit batter in the win on Sunday. Most runs since they scored 11 in a win over the Twins back on April 16th. They got a lot of hits with runners in scoring position. They hit the ball out of the ballpark. They got on base. The Orioles offense kind of 1 through 9 just really did it all on Sunday, despite the fact that they didn't get contributions from everybody. But yeah, it was pretty much everybody except Jorge Mateo reached base. He went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. Gunnar Henderson, only other guy without a hit, 0 for 3, but he did draw 2 walks. And everybody else had at least 1 hit in that game for the O's, which was really, really nice to see. And they didn't exactly hit the ball incredibly hard, but they got a little lucky and they found their spots. And sometimes you got to do that as an offense as well. And now the fourth thing you need to know from that win Sunday is that it was really the guys who had been struggling lately or hadn't had much of a role lately that truly got the Orioles offense going on Sunday. We got to start with Anthony Santander, who even with the big day Sunday is still hitting only .218 on the season. Really has not gotten the bat going. Second straight year where he's just been really slow out of the gates for the Orioles. The hard hit numbers have been kind of concerning, but Sunday might have been his best game of the season. Santander goes 3 for 4 with a couple of runs scored and a grand slam that pretty much, I mean, the game was already in hand, but broke it way open. Grand slam in the 9th inning off of Emilio Pagan that went from 7-0 to an 11-0 game. He had 5 RBIs, also drew a walk, only struck out once, had 3 hard hit balls, like all amazing things you want to see from Anthony Santander. A 3-hit game, a grand slam that he kind of scorched out to right center field, hit it 104 off the bat, 402 feet. Great news for Santander, who hasn't been swinging the bat well. Ryan McKenna hit another home run. I don't know what's happening there, but he homered on Thursday, and then he got the start Sunday in center field, and he went deep again. And do I have to eat crow on Ryan McKenna? I'm not sure yet, but like I thought he really didn't have anything left to give this team, and if it was going to be, it was just going to be defensively. And yet he's given them a few hits and a couple of home runs, and he hits at 96 off the bat and 353 feet. And it was a wall scraper. It ended up in the first row in left field, a left field that is one of the easiest left fields to hit home runs in Major League Baseball. But a home run is a home run. And for Ryan McKenna, that certainly helps out. I mean, Jordan Westburg's been good lately. He also had a 2-run homer in this game, a little scorching shot out to right field. Ramon Arias, who I thought had kind of lost his job. I think Brandon Hyde just wanted to give him a day back in the lineup on Sunday, hitting 9th. It was basically kind of like, we really don't care too much. If, he doesn't hit that well, it's probably fine. And then Ramon Arias just gives you 2 hits somehow on Sunday. Like, yeah, okay, I'll take that from Ramon Arias. Give me a 2 for 3 day with a double. Like, he's still hitting 196, but you'll take that one. And then Colton Cowser, who did not start Friday or Saturday. O's were trying to give him a little bit of a rest. He was 3 for 28 coming into Friday's game. He gets to start again against a lefty in left field on Sunday, and he goes 1 for 3 with an RBI double. He draws a walk. He did not strike out. He had 2 hard hit balls. Like, these were all amazing things for the Orioles offense to see. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from Sunday is that they did it with a little bit of an odd lineup. I mean, you had Jorge Mateo hitting 6th again because he's been swinging the bat well against left-handed starter Nick Lodolo, who had been amazing this year, but the O's got their runs or hits in just 5 innings for the young left-hander. And they also had, Ryan McKenna playing center field and hitting 7th. They gave Cedric Mullins the day off in center against a lefty. Little side note, Cedric Mullins has been slumping a bit lately, and he's been terrible against left-handed pitching, hitting just 143 with a 14 WRC plus against lefties this year for Mullins, so that's something to monitor. Gunnar DH for the first time this year. He'd been playing shortstop every single game. Got a chance to DH. Jorge Mateo got his first start at short of the season. Like, just these, little tweaks, and the offense still performs even with these little tweaks. And that's kind of been the great thing for the Orioles. Like, they've got 13 hitters and everybody is producing in some way right now. Now you got all these pitchers producing. Like, the Orioles are playing their best baseball of the season right now. They've won 6 of 7. They just swept it in Cincinnati, and a well-deserved off day is coming up on Monday after all of that. But even with the off day, I'll be back for a new episode coming up tomorrow on Tuesday. Make sure to leave a 5-star rating and a review wherever you listen. And of course, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles podcast on YouTube. I'll be back tomorrow thinking of doing kind of a fun episode. We're going to look at the guys who are really hitting well this year and talk about what they're doing differently between 2023 and 24 that's helped them succeed. And we'll look at the guys who are kind of slumping early in the year. We'll talk about, okay, what are they doing poorly? Basically, what has changed for the Orioles hitters between 23 and 24 so far? That is going to be coming up on tomorrow's episode. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.